Repeat that, human, the alien responded. After hearing his words, the cold wind blew across the surface of the distant planet. Rocks, jagged and dark, stretched for miles under a pale green sky. The air was thin, and every breath Evan took burned his lungs slightly, but he welcomed the pain. It reminded him he was alive. He had walked across countless worlds before, but this one felt different. The ruins of the city ahead were silent, broken, and strange. Towering structures lay shattered, their glass-like walls cracked and sharp. Evan felt a twinge of fear, but he pushed it aside. He had a mission, and humans did not run from danger. Evan adjusted his pack and stepped carefully over debris. The ground made odd noises under his boots. Every now and then, the wind carried faint echoes, sounds that might have been voices long ago. He had been told by the space maps that this city was abandoned for centuries. Still, he could not shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching. His instincts had saved him many times before, and he trusted them now more than any data pad or map. As he moved further into the city, he noticed strange symbols etched into the walls. They glowed faintly when he touched them, pulsing under his fingers like they were alive. His curiosity burned brighter than his caution. Evan had always believed that humans were made to explore. The unknown excited him. He crouched to examine the markings closer. "These are not just decoration," he murmured. "They must have meant something." Suddenly, a low hum filled the air. Evan froze. The ruins vibrated slightly under his feet. He scanned the area, eyes sharp, searching for any sign of life. Then he saw it, a small, metallic device hidden under a pile of rubble. It looked like it had been dormant for centuries, but it began to pulse as he moved closer. He could feel the energy from it, a strange warmth spreading through the ground. Humans were not meant to feel this kind of power easily. Evan's heart raced, but curiosity won over caution. He reached out and touched the device. Immediately, beams of light shot up into the sky. The hum grew louder, almost deafening, and a strange energy field surrounded him. Evan stumbled back, but it was too late. The device had done its work. Across the city, distant shapes stirred, moving with unnatural precision. Within minutes, a patrol of Xiphorian soldiers appeared. They were tall, with gray skin and eyes that glowed faintly. Their armor reflected the green sky, and their weapons hummed with energy. Evan had read about them in intelligence reports. They were merciless, and their empire had conquered worlds without mercy. Before he could react, they surrounded him. "Step away from the device, human," one of them said. The voice was deep and commanding, and it carried a strange musical tone that made Evan's skin prickle. He raised his hands slowly, not in surrender, but in a gesture of respect. Humans had always survived by reading situations carefully. "I am not here to fight," he said, his voice calm. "I am only exploring." The soldiers did not lower their weapons. Instead, they nodded to each other, and one of them stepped forward. "Commander Lyra will see you," he said. The words were simple, but they carried authority. Evan's stomach tightened. He had read about Commander Lyra. She was feared across her species, known for being clever, ruthless, and unafraid to challenge even her own people. Evan's mind raced, trying to calculate his chances. Humans were not invincible, but they had survived worse. They led him through the broken streets, past buildings that looked like they could collapse at any moment. He noticed the signs of past battles, burned walls, scorch marks, and twisted metal. This world had not been peaceful for a long time. Still, Evan held his head high. Humans were survivors, and he had never let fear stop him. Finally, they reached a tall, imposing structure. The doors were enormous, shaped like the wings of some strange creature. The soldiers motioned for him to enter. Inside, the building was lit by soft, pulsing lights that made the walls glow. The air smelled faintly of metal and something sweet he could not identify. At the center of the room stood a tall figure in shining armor. Her presence filled the space. Evan could feel the power and confidence radiating from her. "Human," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You have activated something you do not understand. Why?" Evan took a deep breath. Humans had always faced challenges with honesty and courage. "I explore," he said. "I want to understand the worlds we discover. I did not mean to cause harm." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Exploration or curiosity?" "Humans are known for cleverness, but also for recklessness. Tell me, why should I believe you are different?" Evan looked at her steadily. Humans had always survived not because they were the strongest, but because they were intelligent, resourceful, and brave. "Because I am human," he said simply. And humans survive, we adapt. We find ways when there are none. We work together when others fail. That is why we endure. The words hung in the air. For a moment the room was silent except for the faint hum of the lights. Lyra tilted her head, studying him closely. Her species did not speak lightly. Every word had weight. She had heard many things, but something about Evan's words made her pause. "Repeat that, human," she said, her tone sharp, but there was curiosity in her voice. Evan straightened. Humans had always spoken truth when needed. "We survive through ingenuity, through adaptability, and through working together. Power is not just strength or weapons. Survival comes from intelligence, courage, and unity. That is what humans are." Lyra stared at him for what seemed like an eternity. The soldiers around her shifted uncomfortably. They had never heard words like these spoken by a human before. Humans were usually underestimated. They were considered weak, simple, and inferior. Yet here was one, standing without fear, speaking with a confidence that challenged everything the Xiphorians had been taught. Lyra walked slowly around him, observing. Every step was measured. "Interesting," she murmured. "You speak of unity, courage, and intelligence. Yet you are alone, alone and facing an entire world that does not trust you." Evan did not flinch. Humans had always faced impossible odds before. "Alone, yes," he said, "but humans are not truly alone. We carry our knowledge, our experience, and our courage with us. Even when facing a world that does not understand us, we find a way. That is what keeps us alive." The room was quiet again. Lyra's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. Her soldiers exchanged looks. Something about this human was different. Humans were not supposed to speak like this. They were not supposed to inspire thought in a Xiphorian commander, yet Evan had done both. Lyra stepped closer, lowering her weapon slightly. "You are bold, human," she said. "Perhaps too bold for your own good. Tell me, why do you risk so much? Is it curiosity, courage, or something else?" Evan paused. He had faced countless dangers across countless worlds. Humans had always taken risks when others would flee. "Because humans seek truth," he said. "We want to know, to learn, to explore. And sometimes that means we face danger, but we do not run from it. We adapt, we survive, and we find a way forward." Lyra studied him, her mind working rapidly. Humans were strange creatures. They were not as strong as Xiphorians, not as fast, not as durable. Yet their spirit, their cleverness, and their courage made them unpredictable. Perhaps that was why they had survived in the galaxy for so long. For the first time, Lyra allowed a small nod. "Very well, human, you will come with me. You will answer questions, not as a prisoner, but as a subject of interest. Do not think I trust you yet, but your words, they are different." Evan allowed himself a small smile. Humans had always survived by using their minds and hearts. Fear alone did not control them. And here, on a distant planet with an alien commander, he felt that old spark of possibility. Perhaps his words could change not only his fate, but something far greater. As Lyra led him deeper into the building, Evan noticed the walls were lined with strange symbols, some glowing faintly. They were similar to those in the ruins outside, yet different, more precise. He realized that this place had been alive once, a hub of knowledge and power. Humans had always been drawn to knowledge. And now he was standing in the center of it, facing a commander who might decide the fate of not only him, but perhaps the understanding between species. The air crackled slightly, and the hum of distant machines filled the halls. Evan's mind raced. He knew he had to be careful. Every word mattered. Every action mattered. But humans were survivors. They faced impossible odds and endured. And perhaps, just perhaps, he could show the Xiphorians that humans were more than they had ever imagined. Lyra stopped at a chamber at the heart of the building. "Sit," she commanded. "Your story, human, tell it to me, and make it convincing, for I have seen liars before." Evan took a seat, keeping his posture straight, and began to recount his journey through the stars, through abandoned worlds, through ruins filled with danger and mystery. Humans had always faced adversity and had always found a way forward. As he spoke, Lyra listened, her expression unreadable but her mind working. Perhaps humans were not the weak creatures her people had thought them to be. Perhaps there was something more. And as the sun of the green sky set behind the ruined city, casting long shadows across the floors of the ancient building, Evan realized that for the first time, humans were not just explorers of the unknown. They were challengers of the impossible, capable of inspiring even the most disciplined alien minds. Evan spoke slowly, carefully choosing his words. He told Lyra about his world, Earth, about humans living together despite differences, and about how they survived in a universe full of dangers. He explained how humans use their minds to solve problems, to create tools and machines, and to work together to achieve things that seemed impossible. Lyra listened quietly, her glowing eyes fixed on him. She had never heard a human speak like this before. Most humans she had known in reports were brash, simple, or only interested in their own gain. This one was different. When Evan finished, he waited for her judgment. For a long moment, there was silence. Then she leaned forward, her long fingers resting on a polished console. "You speak boldly, human," she said. "You claim humans survive through intelligence and unity, and yet you stand here alone on a planet filled with dangers, surrounded by my soldiers. Why should I believe your words? They sound like stories told to inspire, not truth." Evan smiled faintly. Humans had always relied on honesty when possible, especially when trust had to be built. "Because it is true," he said. "I have seen humans survive in conditions that would kill others. I have seen us overcome challenges that no one thought we could. And I have faced dangers before this moment. I am here speaking to you because humans do not give up. We adapt, we learn, we survive." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Adapt, learn, survive. Your words are strong, human, but words alone do not change reality. Actions do. Tell me, have you proven this on other worlds?" Evan thought of the countless planets he had visited. He remembered deserts with storms of acid, frozen wastelands where no life could exist, forests filled with predators far stronger than humans. Each time, humans had survived. Each time, they had found a way to thrive. "Yes," he said. "I have seen humans face worlds that should have destroyed them. We build, we fight, we think, and we find a way. That is how humans survive. That is who we are." Lyra remained silent for a moment, then turned to her soldiers. They looked uneasy. Humans were not supposed to inspire this kind of reaction. The soldiers had always been trained to treat humans as weak, incapable, and expendable. Yet Evan's calm confidence and his words challenged everything they had learned. One soldier stepped closer. "Commander," he said, "if this human speaks truth, then he may be more dangerous than we expected. We should question his intentions more carefully." Lyra shook her head slightly. "Danger is not always in power," she said. "Sometimes danger is in ideas, and this human has ideas that could change perception. Keep your weapons ready, but do not strike. Let us see what he is capable of." Evan noticed the subtle shift in the room. He had always known that humans could influence others not just with strength, but with courage and intelligence. He smiled slightly to himself. Humans were clever in ways other species often underestimated. Over the next hours, Lyra asked him questions about human behavior, about strategy, and about history. She wanted to understand how a species so physically weak in comparison could survive and even thrive in a galaxy full of stronger, more powerful civilizations. Evan answered honestly, explaining how humans worked together, how they learned from mistakes, and how they never gave up even when all hope seemed lost. Lyra listened intently, occasionally nodding or tilting her head. She did not agree with everything he said, but she could not deny that there was logic and truth in his words. Her mind, trained to analyze threats and opportunities, began to consider a possibility she had never thought before. Could humans truly be more than what her people believed? Could they, despite their weaknesses, be capable of changing the course of events in ways no one expected? As the questioning continued, one of the soldiers returned with news. A patrol had discovered signs of a rebel faction moving through the ruins outside the city. They had been monitoring the area for months, and now their presence was confirmed. Lyra's eyes flickered with interest. Humans had survived against odds like this before. Perhaps this situation could be used as a test. She turned to Evan. "Human, you speak of survival and courage. There is a situation outside these walls. A faction seeks to disrupt order in our territory. Many would see this as a threat. I wonder how a human would act in such circumstances. Are you willing to show me?" Evan did not hesitate. Humans had always faced danger directly, not by avoiding it. "Yes," he said simply. "Show me what needs to be done and I will try." Lyra nodded, a small smile forming at the corner of her mouth. "Very well. You will accompany a small team. Observe, advise, and if necessary, act. Remember, human, this is not a game. Lives will be lost if mistakes are made." Evan followed the small group of Xiphorian soldiers out into the ruins. The air was tense. He could feel the danger pressing in from all directions. The rebel faction moved with stealth, avoiding patrols, but their numbers were significant. Humans had faced enemies like this before. It was a challenge, yes, but one that could be overcome with thought and strategy. As they approached the rebel encampment, Evan began to observe the terrain carefully. Humans had a way of seeing patterns others did not. He noticed weak points in the rebel defenses, places where the patrols could be flanked, and ways to use the environment to gain advantage. "We can approach from the north," he suggested quietly. "The rocks provide cover and their sensors will not detect us there. From that position, you can surround them." The soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. Humans rarely had strategic insight of this kind. They had always relied on Xiphorian tactics, which valued strength and direct action over careful planning. Lyra, however, considered his words seriously. "Very well," she said. "We will follow your plan, human, but any mistake will be yours to answer for." Evan nodded. Humans had always learned quickly, even in dangerous situations. "Understood," he said. They moved silently through the jagged rocks. Evan guided them, pointing out dangers and opportunities. The soldiers began to see the value of human thinking. When they reached the position he suggested, they waited, observing the rebel faction from cover. The rebels moved with confidence, unaware that their enemies had anticipated their actions. Evan whispered, "Wait for my signal. We strike only when they are vulnerable. Precision is better than force." Time passed slowly. Every movement, every sound was crucial. Then, as the rebels gathered near a supply cache, Evan gave the signal. The Xiphorian soldiers moved quickly, surrounding the rebels before they could react. The humans' plan worked perfectly. The rebels were captured without unnecessary violence, and the operation ended with no casualties among the soldiers or civilians. Lyra watched from a distance, her eyes wide with surprise and respect. Humans were not supposed to succeed in ways that did not involve brute force. Yet here was one, using intelligence, observation, and timing to achieve what would have taken an army of Xiphorians to accomplish. She stepped forward as the operation concluded, her expression unreadable. "You have done well, human," she said. "Your methods are unconventional but effective. Perhaps I underestimated your species." Evan shrugged slightly. Humans did not boast. They let actions speak louder than words. "I just use what humans always use: observation, strategy, and caution. That is how we survive." Lyra's gaze softened, though she did not show it openly. She had seen courage before, but this was different. The human had not only survived, but had influenced the outcome of a dangerous situation without relying on strength alone. Perhaps humans were capable of more than anyone had believed. As they returned to the city, Lyra walked alongside Evan. "You have shown intelligence and courage," she said quietly. "Few humans do or can. You may be an exception, or perhaps there is more to your species than my people understand. Either way, you have earned my attention, human. Tell me more about your kind. Teach me what humans are capable of, for I want to understand fully." Evan smiled faintly. Humans had always believed in sharing knowledge, in helping others see new possibilities. "I will," he said. "Humans survive because we think, because we adapt, and because we do not give up. You will see if you watch closely that we are capable of more than what others believe." Lyra remained silent for a moment, studying him. Then she nodded slightly. "Perhaps you are right," she said. "Perhaps humans are more than a curiosity. Perhaps your words and actions can teach my people something valuable. But know this, human, the galaxy is full of dangers. Not all will listen and not all will survive. Your journey is only beginning." Evan felt a spark of determination. Humans had always faced impossible odds and survived. They had always adapted and found ways to overcome challenges. Here, on a distant planet with an alien commander, he knew that survival was just the beginning. Humans had a way of turning survival into influence, turning courage into respect, and turning ideas into power. As the city's ruins faded behind them in the setting sun, Evan realized that his words and actions had begun to change the perception of a species that had always underestimated humans. For the first time, he felt the possibility of a future where humans were not just survivors, but could inspire change, even in worlds far from their own. And as Lyra walked beside him, silent but thoughtful, Evan knew that the real test of human ingenuity, courage, and spirit was just beginning. Evan followed Lyra through the twisting corridors of the city's central building. The walls, once shiny and perfect, were now cracked and faded, but still pulsed with faint energy. It reminded him of the ruins outside, a ghost of the civilization that had built this place. Every step he took, he felt the weight of history pressing down. Humans were explorers by nature, but even explorers could feel small in the presence of such old power. Lyra led him into a wide chamber filled with holographic maps and glowing panels. The room smelled faintly of ozone and metal. Soldiers moved quietly around the edges, monitoring the displays, but all attention seemed to focus on her. She stopped at the center and gestured for Evan to stay. "We have a problem," she said, her voice low but firm. "The rebellion outside is only part of it. There are those within my own people who would see me fail. They distrust humans, and they will use any excuse to undermine me." Evan listened carefully. Humans had faced political challenges before. They were clever not only in battle, but in understanding people. "Then we need a plan," he said calmly. "We cannot only survive, we must act wisely, and we must show that humans can help without causing harm." Lyra studied him, and he could see a flicker of respect in her glowing eyes. "You speak boldly for a human," she said. "Many of my people would have fled or hidden. You think and act." Evan shrugged lightly. Humans had always faced dangers head-on. That was part of who they were. "We survive because we think, because we plan, and because we do not give up," he said. "If you allow me to help, I can show you ways to succeed that your soldiers may not see." Lyra nodded slowly. "Very well. You will work with my advisors, observe and advise. But remember, trust is fragile. One mistake and everything will be lost." Evan spent the next hours learning the inner workings of the city's command. He watched how Lyra interacted with her advisors, how she made decisions, and how the soldiers obeyed orders. He noticed weaknesses that others ignored, places where logic and strategy could overcome brute force. Humans had always excelled at seeing patterns others missed, and he began to offer suggestions quietly. At first, some advisors ignored him, skeptical of a human who had no experience with Xiphorian politics. But slowly, as his ideas proved practical and safe, more began to listen. Lyra observed silently, noting which advisors accepted his advice and which resisted. She had never trusted a human, yet she could not deny that this one was different. Perhaps humans were more capable than her people had believed. Perhaps courage, intelligence, and strategy could indeed come from beings considered weak. As night fell over the city, Evan and Lyra walked along a balcony overlooking the ruins outside. Fires from small patrols flickered in the distance, and he could see faint movement among the rocks where the rebel faction had been spotted earlier. The galaxy was dangerous, but humans were never afraid of danger. They adapted to it. "You understand the risks," Lyra said, her voice quieter now. "Not just from the rebels, but from within my own people. They will see your presence as a weakness, and they may act to remove it." Evan nodded. Humans had always faced betrayal and intrigue before. They had survived because they understood people, and because they could turn threats into advantages. "I understand," he said, "but humans have always found a way to turn challenges into opportunity." "I can help you do the same." Lyra studied him, her expression unreadable. "You are bold for a human," she said. "Many would speak without thought, but you think before you act. That may save lives, human." The following day, Evan was introduced to a small team of advisors. He observed their arguments carefully, noting their biases and weaknesses. Some relied on strength and aggression, believing that fear was the best way to control people. Others preferred tradition and caution, afraid to take risks. Evan saw an opportunity. Humans had always balanced caution and courage, strength and strategy. He began to offer suggestions that combined these principles, and slowly the advisors began to take notice. One of the advisors, a stern Xiphorian named Vader, challenged him openly. "You are human," he said. "You do not understand the complexity of our politics. Your ideas are dangerous. Why should we follow them?" Evan met his gaze calmly. Humans had faced doubt and hostility before. "I do not ask you to follow blindly," he said. "I ask you to consider what works. Your people are strong, yes, but strength alone does not always win. Strategy, planning, and observation can achieve more than power alone. I offer what I have learned. Test it, and you will see it works." Vader hesitated. Humans were unpredictable, but Evan's calm confidence and logic made him pause. Perhaps this human had a point. Humans had survived against odds that would have destroyed others. Perhaps there was truth in his words. Over the next days, Evan worked closely with Lyra and the advisors. He helped plan patrol routes, suggested defensive strategies, and offered solutions that balanced caution and action. Slowly, the team began to trust him. Even Vader started to acknowledge that the humans' ideas were effective. Meanwhile, rumors of the rebel faction's movements grew. They were bold, striking supply routes and communications. Evan noticed patterns in their behavior, weaknesses in their strategy, and suggested ways to counter them. Humans had always excelled at understanding patterns, and here, that ability became crucial. Lyra watched as Evan's suggestions led to successful operations. Supplies were secured, communication lines restored, and rebel attacks were minimized. The city remained safe, not through brute force but through careful planning and human ingenuity. Her respect for him grew, though she did not reveal it openly. One evening, as they reviewed the day's operations, Lyra spoke quietly. "You have done well, human. Your ideas save lives. I see now that humans may be more capable than my people believed." Evan nodded. Humans had always let actions speak louder than words. "We survive," he said simply, "and we help others survive as well. That is what humans do." Lyra smiled faintly. It was rare for her to show such expression. "Perhaps your species deserves more respect than I was taught to give." The next challenge came quickly. A group within Lyra's command questioned her judgment, arguing that allowing a human to advise them was dangerous. They demanded that Evan be removed from the city. Lyra knew this could lead to conflict and possibly rebellion. She turned to Evan. "You see, human, not all problems are outside the walls," she said. "Some are within. Can your species deal with challenges like this?" Evan understood immediately. Humans had always faced internal conflict as much as external threats. They had survived betrayals, political struggles, and rivalries. "Yes," he said, "we understand that trust is fragile and that leadership is tested not only by enemies but by those close to power. I can help you manage this." Over the next days, Evan worked quietly with Lyra to address the concerns. He suggested strategies to demonstrate his value without challenging authority, ways to present evidence of his ideas, success, and methods to show that cooperation with a human could strengthen their command rather than weaken it. Slowly, the internal opposition began to soften. Some advisors even admitted that his strategies prevented losses and improved efficiency. Lyra watched this process carefully. Humans had always been able to navigate complex social situations, using intelligence, patience, and understanding. Evan was proving that he was not just brave and clever, but also wise in ways that Xiphorians rarely expected. As the days passed, Evan became more than an outsider. He became a trusted advisor, a problem solver, and an example of human ingenuity and resilience. The soldiers began to see that humans were not weak, not inferior. They could observe, plan, and execute strategies that saved lives. One evening, after a long day of planning and discussion, Lyra walked with Evan along the balcony again. The city below was quiet, the rebels subdued for the moment, and the internal opposition had softened. She regarded him with a thoughtful expression. "You have done more than survive, human," she said. "You have influenced my people, shown them that humans can contribute more than they imagined. That is not something I expected from your kind." Evan smiled faintly. Humans had always surprised others. That was part of their strength. "We do what is needed," he said. "Humans survive, but we also inspire, we plan, and we help others succeed. That is how we endure." Lyra nodded slowly, her expression unreadable, but her mind was clearly turning. Humans were not the weak creatures her people had believed. This one, at least, was exceptional. Perhaps there was more to humanity than she had ever realized. The night passed, and the city slept under a green sky filled with faint stars. Evan knew that his journey was far from over. Challenges remained. Rebels could strike again, internal opposition could return, and the galaxy was full of unknown dangers. But humans had always faced impossible odds. They had survived when others could not. And here, on this distant planet, Evan felt the familiar spark of determination that had carried his species across countless worlds. He looked at Lyra, standing silently beside him, and realized that trust had begun to form, not complete, but enough to allow cooperation. Humans had always built alliances where others saw walls. Perhaps this fragile trust could grow. Perhaps humans could not only survive but thrive, even among aliens who had once doubted them. And as the first faint light of dawn touched the ruins outside, Evan knew that the true test was coming. Not just survival, not just strategy, but the ability to inspire, to lead, and to change the minds of those who had never believed in humans. That was the challenge ahead, and humans had never backed down from a challenge. The morning light spread across the broken city, casting long shadows over the ruins. Evan stood on the balcony of Lyra's command building, observing the streets below. The rebel faction had been weakened, but their presence was still felt. Small groups moved stealthily among the rocks, striking at supply lines and communications. Evan could see the patterns in their movement, the repeated mistakes they made, and the opportunities to counter them. Humans had always survived by noticing details others ignored. Lyra joined him silently, her armor glinting in the pale sunlight. "They are becoming bolder," she said. "I fear a larger attack may come soon. Your strategies have worked so far, human, but this may be the real test." Evan nodded. Humans had always faced tests far greater than this. On countless worlds, they had survived storms, predators, and enemies that seemed unstoppable. He had no doubt that with careful planning, they could handle this as well. "We need to act quickly," he said. "We can anticipate their moves and strike before they gather strength." "Timing will be everything." Lyra studied him, her glowing eyes sharp. "You have already influenced my people more than I imagined. They follow your advice and see value in your ideas, but this is different. Lives will be at risk." Evan smiled faintly. Humans had always weighed risk and reward carefully. If we plan carefully and act wisely, we can minimize casualties. Humans survive not only by strength, but by thought, observation, and cooperation. That is what I will do here. They gathered the advisors and soldiers in the command chamber. Evan went through his observations, pointing out weak spots in the rebel faction's patrols, suggesting ways to set traps without unnecessary violence, and identifying areas where they could gather intelligence without being seen. The Xiphorian advisors listened carefully. Some were skeptical, but the evidence of his previous successes gave weight to his words. Lyra watched quietly. She had commanded many operations, but rarely had she seen a strategist like this human. Humans were underestimated, often dismissed as weak, but this one thought in ways that challenged even the best-trained Xiphorian minds. Perhaps humans could indeed change the outcome of battles in ways that brute force alone could not. As the operation began, Evan led a small team to set up observation points around the rebel-controlled area. He moved silently through the jagged rocks, his eyes scanning for movement. Humans had always relied on awareness and cleverness, and now that skill was proving vital. They observed the rebels' patterns carefully, noting which paths were dangerous and which were safe. Returning to the command center, Evan shared his findings. "They will strike the supply route at this point," he said, pointing to a map. "If we position forces here, we can intercept them without unnecessary fighting. Their strength is in numbers, but their strategy is weak. We can use that against them." Lyra nodded. "Very well. Execute your plan, human. I will trust your judgment, though I will be close by." The operation unfolded as Evan predicted. When the rebels moved to attack the supply route, the Xiphorian forces, guided by his strategy, surrounded them without alerting them. The rebels were caught off guard, and many surrendered without a fight. The rest fled into the ruins, where they would have difficulty regrouping. Lives were saved, both among the soldiers and the civilians who depended on the supplies. Lyra approached Evan as the operation ended. "You have done more than I expected," she said. "Your strategy minimized loss and maximized efficiency. I see now that humans are capable of much more than we believed." Evan shook his head slightly. Humans did not boast. "I only use what humans always use," he said. "Observation, planning, and patience. That is how we survive." The following days were tense. The city remained on high alert, and Evan worked closely with Lyra to strengthen defenses and prepare for potential attacks. He trained small groups of soldiers in observation and strategy, teaching them to anticipate enemy moves and to act with caution. Humans had always adapted to challenges, and now he was sharing that skill with the Xiphorians. One evening, as they reviewed maps and reports, Lyra spoke quietly. "There are those within my command who still doubt you, human. They see your presence as a threat to tradition. How do you handle doubt among people who distrust you?" Evan considered this. Humans had faced doubt countless times. They had survived betrayals, challenges, and disbelief. "We show results," he said. "We act with integrity, think carefully, and demonstrate our value through action. Words alone are not enough." Trust is built over time with consistent effort. Lyra studied him, impressed by his calm confidence. You are right, human. Your kind has a patience and clarity that my people rarely display. Perhaps that is why humans endure. The next challenge came when the rebel faction attempted a coordinated attack on multiple supply points. This time, they were stronger, more organized, and more dangerous. Evan observed the signs carefully, noting patterns in their movement. Humans had always survived by anticipating danger and acting decisively. He shared his plan with Lyra and the advisors, suggesting ways to divide the rebel forces, minimize confrontation, and protect civilians. The operation began at dawn. Evan led small squads along the high ground, guiding them through hidden paths and using the terrain to their advantage. The rebels were confused and disoriented, unable to coordinate their attacks effectively. Human ingenuity proved stronger than brute force. Civilians were safe, and rebel forces were weakened without unnecessary casualties. After the operation, Lyra approached Evan. "Your methods continue to impress," she said. "You have saved lives, influenced my people, and demonstrated that humans are not what we expected." "I am beginning to believe your words about your species." Evan smiled faintly. Humans had always let actions speak louder than words. "We survive," he said, "and we help others survive. That is how humans endure." As the days passed, Evan became more than a strategist. He became a symbol of what humans could achieve. Soldiers who had once doubted him now sought his guidance. Advisors who had dismissed him now respected his insight. Even Lyra's closest confidants began to see the value of human thought and action. One evening, as the sun set behind the jagged ruins, Lyra walked with Evan along the balcony again. "You have changed much in a short time, human," she said. "Not only in the field but in the minds of my people. Few have accomplished what you have." Evan nodded. Humans had always adapted to challenges and influenced others without forcing them. "We do what is necessary," he said. "Humans survive because we think, act wisely, and never give up. We also inspire others to do the same." Lyra's eyes softened, though she did not show it openly. "Perhaps your kind deserves more respect than I was taught to give. Your words and actions have shown me that humans are capable of more than strength alone. Intelligence, courage, and determination can influence more than power ever could." Evan felt a familiar spark of determination. Humans had always faced impossible odds. They had survived where others failed. And now, on this distant planet, he could see the beginning of change. Not just for himself, but for the way his species was perceived. Humans were more than survivors. They could inspire, lead, and teach even the most disciplined alien minds. The night passed quietly, but Evan knew that more challenges were coming. The galaxy was full of dangers, and the rebel faction was not defeated yet. Internal opposition could return at any moment, but humans had always faced the unknown with courage and cleverness. They had survived storms, predators, and enemies stronger than themselves. Here, too, they could endure. Lyra and Evan stood together, looking out over the city. The green sky shimmered faintly with the first stars of night. The rebels were quiet for now, but the city remained vigilant. Evan understood that survival was only the beginning. Humans had always turned survival into influence, challenges into opportunity, and ideas into power. That was the essence of humanity. Lyra spoke softly. "I am beginning to understand, human. Perhaps your kind is not so simple as I believed. Perhaps humans are capable of inspiring change, even in a galaxy that doubts them." Evan smiled. Humans had always believed in hope, in perseverance, and in the power of courage. "We endure," he said, "and we help others endure. That is how humans survive and thrive." The stars shone faintly in the sky, and the city below rested in a cautious calm. But Evan knew that the true tests were still ahead. Rebels could strike again, internal conflicts could flare, and unknown dangers could emerge from beyond the stars. Humans had faced far worse, and they had always found a way. He looked at Lyra, standing silently beside him, and realized that trust was growing, fragile but real. Humans had always built bridges where others saw walls. Perhaps this trust could grow into understanding. Perhaps humans could not only survive, but change the fate of those who had once doubted them. And as the first light of dawn crept over the ruins, Evan felt the spark of possibility burn brighter. Humans had always faced impossible challenges, and they had always endured. Now, on this distant planet, the real journey was only beginning. The morning sun rose over the jagged ruins of the city, painting the broken towers with pale light. Evan stood on the balcony, watching the streets below. The rebel faction had grown restless after their previous defeats. Intelligence reports indicated a coordinated attack on multiple supply points and communication hubs. Evan could feel the tension in the air. Humans had always faced impossible odds and survived, but this challenge would test not only courage and intelligence but the trust he had built among the Xiphorians. Lyra joined him silently, her armor reflecting the first rays of light. "They are bold," she said. "They know we anticipate them, yet they strike anyway. This may be their strongest attempt yet. Are you ready, human?" Evan met her gaze calmly. Humans had survived far worse than this. "We can handle it," he said. "If we act wisely, plan carefully, and coordinate, we can protect the city and minimize risk. That is how humans endure." Lyra nodded. She had come to trust him, though she would not say it openly. His strategies had saved lives, strengthened her forces, and influenced her people. Few humans could inspire such change in a single alien command, but Evan had done it. "Very well," she said. "Let us see how your human methods perform under fire." The city's command chamber was alive with activity. Advisors and soldiers moved quickly, preparing defenses and coordinating units. Evan spread out maps across a glowing table, pointing out the rebels' likely paths, their weaknesses, and where the Xiphorians could intercept them most effectively. Every detail mattered. Humans had always succeeded by noticing what others overlooked. "We will divide our forces," Evan said, "but coordinate through signals and timing. Each squad will cover a specific area. We anticipate their moves, block their paths, and minimize confrontation. The goal is to protect civilians and supplies, not to destroy for the sake of power." Lyra studied the plan. It was cautious, strategic, and efficient. Humans had a way of thinking that combined observation, prediction, and careful action. She nodded. "Execute it, human. I will oversee the operation from the center. Do not fail." The squads moved into position. Evan guided some personally, leading small groups along hidden paths, using terrain and shadows to gain advantage. Rebels appeared from the rocks in small bands, expecting confusion, but Evan's plan countered them at every turn. Soldiers blocked escape routes, while others used non-lethal methods to subdue enemies. Civilians were kept safe, and the rebels found themselves trapped without realizing how. Evan moved swiftly, coordinating signals and guiding squads. Humans had always excelled at improvisation when danger arose. A rebel group tried to flank one of the supply points, but Evan had anticipated it. He signaled the nearby squad to intercept from high ground, forcing the rebels into a corner. They surrendered without a fight. Lyra observed silently, impressed by his ability to read the battlefield and predict enemy movements. She had never trusted a human before, yet here was one controlling outcomes better than her own seasoned officers. The soldiers around her, too, began to see that humans were not weak. Intelligence, strategy, and courage could rival brute force. The battle continued throughout the day. Rebels attacked at multiple points, but Evan's strategies held. He coordinated defenders, adjusted squads in real time, and anticipated mistakes the rebels made. At one point, a squad was at risk of being overwhelmed. Evan led a diversionary maneuver personally, drawing the rebels away and allowing the squad to regroup. Humans had always faced threats directly and adapted quickly, and this was no exception. By midday, the rebels' coordination began to collapse. Evan noticed the change immediately. "They are panicking," he said. "Their attacks are no longer organized. We can guide them into containment areas and capture them without unnecessary fighting." Lyra nodded. "Do it, human. Finish this without unnecessary bloodshed." Using clever positioning and signals, Evan guided the remaining rebels into enclosed areas. They were trapped and surrender became inevitable. Civilians were safe, supplies were secure, and the operation had minimal casualties. The city had survived not through sheer power, but through intelligence, planning, and human ingenuity. After the operation, Lyra approached Evan in the command chamber. Her usual calm and stern demeanor softened slightly. "You have done more than I expected," she said. "You saved the city, minimized losses, and influenced my people. Your methods are effective." "I see now that humans are more than what I was taught to believe." Evan shook his head lightly. Humans did not boast. "I only use what humans always use," he said. Observation, careful planning, and courage, that is how we survive and help others survive. Lyra studied him quietly, a flicker of admiration in her glowing eyes. Perhaps your kind deserves more respect than we were taught to give, she said. You have shown that intelligence, courage, and determination can influence events as much as strength, if not more. That is a lesson my people must learn. Evan felt a familiar spark of determination. Humans had always faced impossible challenges and survived. They had always turned obstacles into opportunities. And now, on this distant planet, he could see the possibility of a new beginning, not just for himself, but for the way his species was perceived by the Xiphorians. As the city began to recover from the attacks, Evan worked with Lyra to establish new patrol strategies, communication systems, and training programs. Humans had always adapted, learned, and taught others, and now he was sharing these skills with the Xiphorians. Soldiers who had once doubted him now sought his guidance. Advisors who had dismissed him now respected his insight. Even those who had opposed him reluctantly acknowledged the value of human thought. Lyra and Evan spent hours discussing strategy, leadership, and philosophy. You have changed much in a short time, human, she said. Not only in action but in the minds of my people, few could achieve what you have done. Evan nodded. Humans had always believed in action over words. We endure, he said. Humans survive because we think, act wisely, and never give up. We also inspire others to do the same. Over the following weeks, the city slowly returned to normal. The rebel threat was contained, and the Xiphorians had learned valuable lessons from the human strategies. Trust grew between Evan and Lyra, fragile but real. Humans had always built bridges where others saw walls, and now he had helped form understanding between two species. One evening, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city, Lyra spoke quietly. You have done more than survive, human. You have changed minds, saved lives, and taught my people something they needed to learn. I am beginning to understand your kind. Perhaps humans are capable of inspiring change, even where others doubt them. Evan smiled faintly. Humans had always believed in hope, perseverance, and courage. We endure, he said. We help others endure. That is how humans survive and thrive. Lyra nodded, her expression softening further. Your actions will not be forgotten. You have earned respect, not only from me but from many who doubted. Your words and deeds have changed the perception of your species. That is a rare accomplishment. Evan looked out at the city below, the green sky above, and the stars beginning to shine faintly. He knew that the galaxy was full of unknown dangers, but humans had faced impossible odds before. They had survived storms, predators, wars, and enemies stronger than themselves. Here, too, they had endured. As the first light of dawn spread across the city, Evan realized that survival was only the beginning. Humans had a way of turning challenges into opportunity, obstacles into lessons, and courage into influence. They were not just survivors, they were teachers, leaders, and examples to others. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression unreadable but her voice gentle. Repeat that, human, she said softly. Evan looked at her, curious. Repeat what? She smiled faintly. Your words about humans. Speak them again, not to convince me, but to remind both of us what your kind represents. Evan took a deep breath. Humans had always believed in truth, perseverance, and courage. Humans survive because we think, because we adapt, because we act wisely, and because we never give up. We endure and we help others endure. That is how humans survive and thrive. Lyra nodded, a small smile on her face. Then let it be remembered. Not just by my people, but by all who see what humans can achieve. Your species is stronger than most imagine, not in power, but in courage, intelligence, and heart. Evan felt a sense of accomplishment, not just for himself, but for humanity. On this distant world, among aliens who had doubted him, he had proven that humans could inspire, teach, and survive. He had changed perceptions, saved lives, and built trust where there was none. The city below began to stir with life again. Soldiers patrolled with confidence, citizens moved safely through the streets, and the ruins of battle became a reminder of resilience and strategy. Evan knew more challenges would come, but humans had always faced challenges and endured. That was who they were. As he stood beside Lyra, looking out at the green sky and the quiet city, Evan understood that this was only the beginning. Humans had survived countless worlds, and now they had begun to leave a mark in the galaxy. Trust, respect, courage, and intelligence could change even the hearts of the most disciplined aliens. And in that moment, Evan knew that humans were not just survivors. They were a force that could inspire, teach, and endure across the stars.